What's good, y'all? Listen, listen. We got a special show today. Got a special guest in the building. Not Chris. We got Charles in the building. We gonna talk a lot of basketball. We gonna get into some trades, some things that I'm seeing on the web. Before we get into that, I do have a question for y'all.
Hmm.
It's not even really a question, actually. I just want to know this.
I'm not
Never
gonna
mind.
lie and portray this ultimate poise like I've been had it figured out. Nah, I just didn't quit. That's the only distinguishing quality from me and probably whoever else going through this or went through this or is gonna go through this is that I ain't quit. I went through every emotion. I went through every emotion with trying to pursue what I'm doing. You know what I mean? And I think that what gonna separate whoever's gonna try to go for something is that you ain't gonna quit.
Hey yo, don't fall for no one nickels. You know what I'm saying? Don't take no silver plated quarters, and make sure you keep your mental straight. It's men's mental health month. You know what I'm saying? Me, Charles, Chris, we want y'all to understand. We need you here. You're important. You got a voice. We need you on we need you on this planet. Uh, Make sure you wake up every day. You put one foot in front of the other one, and you just follow through, man. That's it. What's good, y'all?
Chilling, man. Get ready for this draft.
Yeah, we go get into the draft because we got some draft questions too. Chris, how you? How you? You good?
Good man. Look, I'm just happy to have who I would call Charles like unsigned hype. You know what I'm saying? He one of the best, he one of the best Pelicans talkers without a deal, you know what I mean? Without, shout out to Charles Rocky for Lauren keeping spaces alive.
No doubt.
I
Absolutely.
still think whether it's a collective of y'all or individually, man, y'all gotta tap into the podcast land. But Charles is if y'all don't know, I think I've had him on in space a few different times. If y'all been on Twitter spaces or X spaces over the past few years, you know his name now. We gonna put up his Twitter name in a little bit, man. But Charles, he's always a fun person to talk Pelicans, with. I think very, very balanced. But also brings that passion. And I think this topic, he has something very interesting to add that doesn't fit the majority opinion at this point, going forward.
Hey,
I,
Charles, look. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I appreciate that, Chris, and like always, man. Shout out to you for what you did with the spaces, man, and bringing the Pelicans Twitter community together. We just trying to keep that momentum going, man. Appreciate what y'all doing. Y'all killing it right now, so keep it up.
Um, yeah, man. I do want to shout out to you, Florence. Shout out to Rocky. Shout out to everybody who. Hey, on the real, shout out to that boy, Columbia, man, Pelicans Columbia, because he been doing good film work too. Shout out to
Absolutely.
him. Charles, I do want to say I've been waiting on a podcast with you for a long time. You way too smart to just be on Twitter. Like your voice is important. I do want to say that. But look, Chris brought something to my attention from you, and it's crazy because I feel like I've turned a corner on this subject.
hmm
I am now firmly a believer in what we about to talk about.
hmm
But before we talk about it, I want to say this. We talk about, this is Griff. Griff said some of big change. He said it. He said it very. He said really, really three times in the sentence in the exit interview, right? So I want to say this. I'm talking about trading Brandon Ingram, right? So the issue is for me is ROI. For
hmm
people who not familiar with ROI, is return on your investment. What is that? So that is a ratio that measures the profitability of an
hmm
investment by comparing the gains or losses to its costs. In the terms of Brandon Ingram, this is my question for y'all. How much does a dollar cost?
Mm.
Because the change in the subject matter for me is what I'm looking at is the return. When I'm sending Brandon out, what I'm getting in return, it just
hmm
does not seem to add up. Right. So I'm gonna put your tweet up. Charles, you give me your thoughts. Then we go holler at Chris, and you know what I'm saying. We gonna talk about this like gentlemen. You know what I'm saying. So before we get into it, Charles had a tweet. Shout out to Chris. I don't really like shouting him out, but he brought this to my attention. I'm never gonna shout out Barstool, but Charles said the question is, what should the Pelicans do with Brandon Ingram this offseason? And you said the market has been set and it's reasonable in light of the cap situation. Pay him. Can you speak to that? Like, tell me how you tell me how you arrived at this process. And before that, were you pro trading Brandon prior to the self actualization? I think at a
So
market.
I wasn't necessarily like, this is the best way to move forward, but it did feel like things was kind of untenable in light of this season, and I think Brandon spoke to that. He said it was his worst season. We'd already seen, there were some kinks in the armor when you look at the trio of CJ, Zion, and Brandon. You look at the shooting, it's just clunky. And you think to yourself, okay, where do we kind of go from here? And it seems on the surface, I think, and not even on the surface, I think trading Brandon makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. For me, if we traded him, I was looking at a couple of different options. I think Philadelphia is my favorite situation, but Philadelphia hinges on like at least two other situations going sideways. And I think, it's like when you're trying to buy a house and you need certain things to line up, if the other person has to sell their house before you can, it gets clunky, right? So you need Philly to kind of turn down Paul George, and you need them to make a decision on Jimmy Butler. And a lot of with these trades, it's like timing, has to be right. So I'm not thinking that's the best way to go. And then to your point, Lito, your other trades, I feel like you're losing too much. You said, how much does a dollar really cost? I think it depends on how broke you are, what you're willing to do for that dollar. And I think, and ironically, the Pelicans are the team that needs, I think talent-wise, they need Brandon probably a little bit more than some of the other teams that might be interested in his services. So they have to come correct. And the genesis behind the tweet was, okay, so you got the Clippers and Paul George doing their little dance. They're not trying to pay Paul George the max. You got Pat Riley sending shots at Jimmy Butler, not trying to pay him the max. Then you get Pascal Siakam going for 190. That's short of his max. So that's like three dudes, in my opinion, who have better resumes and are as talented as Brandon or even more talented. They're not getting the max. So I think we can kind of put to bed those $52 million Jaylen Brown scenarios, right? He didn't get the super max. He didn't qualify. And then he didn't necessarily put his best resume forward to really come through and get that 221, that Donovan Mitchell type money. So I think things are lining up to where the numbers make sense. And that's kind of the genesis of the tweet.
So Charles, what I'm curious about, what are your thoughts about Brandon Ingram, the player at this stage? What are your thoughts about him going forward with this team? And it's been I think the consistent narrative has been all over the place at one point. A few years ago, or even maybe even as early as last season, you would have been in a majority in your in your thinking. Or, I mean, even if it was split, whether it was whether you were on the side of trading him or you were on the side of re-signing him for whatever reason, versus now where it feels like a lot of people have fatigue and do the things that don't all have to do with Brandon, but things that Brandon didn't necessarily 100% help either with his play, some of the things that happened at the end of the season, and maybe some other things that he could have done better. I would say, if we're just talking aesthetics and how things look, the appearance of certain things, right? But I think for most people, at the end of the day, no matter what you think, whether you think the Pelicans should keep him or you think you should trade him, it comes down, or it should come down to what type of player do you think he is, and how do you think he fits as a cornerstone of your franchise or a part of a duo or a trio going forward? He's 26. If you sign him to a long-term deal, whether that means you're open to trading him down the line, you have to be open to thinking and still configuring a way for him, Zion, and whoever to fit, to mesh, and get the best out of each other on a basketball floor.
Mm-hmm.
So some think that will never work. Others are more often. Some think Brandon gets a bad rep or bad rap when it comes to some of these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about him as a player, and what you would be investing in going forward based off what you've seen in the past, or what you think will change going forward?
I think that Brandon is he's an imperfect basketball player that's teetering on the line of like elite. He's good enough. I make the comparison to Jason Tatum, but it's not a literal comparison. It's like Jason Tatum gets criticized because he's right there at being one of the best in the world, but he's just a tier below that. Brandon is right there at being one of the top, let's say 30 to 35 players in the world, but he does things that bring him down. He's like right there on the line. And I think when you're right there, you see more of what they're not than more of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, and that he hasn't helped himself, right? Like the same way that Jason Tatum on a higher scale was still shooting the step backs. He wasn't the playmaker that he needed to be against Golden State. Instead of looking and seeing the sixth or seventh best player in the world, you're comparing him to Joker and to Doncic and those guys, and you criticize them. And you look at Brandon and you say, man, like, why aren't you up there with Spider and Trey and those guys? Because you're not efficient enough. The analogy that I've used the last couple of years is Brandon is a B student in, the hardest math you can take in college, right? Like he can do the work, right? But he's not acing it like the other guys that you want to compare him to. So you like, what it's like, dude, you can do all this stuff, but you're not the A student that you need to be. And I think that's frustrating. And it's readily apparent what he needs to do. And I think when you can draw a straight line to somebody's deficiencies like that, it's really easy to magnify those deficiencies, in my opinion.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, Lito, I was gonna ask you, how much do you think of the situation that we're in right now falls on Brandon, and how much falls on the forces out that Brandon can't control, his teammates, the organization, the infrastructure. What's the split in regards to the responsibility that he shares and the responsibility that others share to where we're sitting today?
So I'm at a camp where I feel like, listen, the thing that Brandon can control is shot selection. If we're asking you to take specific shots, Willie is Willie has stated he wants 43s a game, right? So if I'm of the mindset of my star my star small forward, my star forward, I want him to be a perimeter player for real and take these shots, because you've seen in the past he can take and he can make those shots at a decent size clip at 36%. I don't think you're asking for Brandon to really, I think 38% is probably unattainable for Brandon. And that's fine, but it's the volume of the shot that you need from him, because you have to create some sort of threat from that position, right? So I think for me, the way, style of play, shot selection, those things are strictly on Brandon. So when I say that, I mean that's 100% on his shoulders, right? Because you want to eliminate, Chad has a point. He says you didn't see Brandon's style of play in the playoffs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at that, I'm like, well, damn, yeah. I mean, that's pretty true. The difficultness of the shots, right? It looked like a clear elimination of that in the playoffs. Now, here's the thing. I believe Brandon Ingram has talent. I'm with Charles. I think 6'9", 6'10" threes, they don't grow on trees. You don't see them often, especially somebody with the ability to facilitate the basketball. And the ability to get a tough shot. Now, I will say, we'll probably get into that later, but I'm gonna say that is on his shoulders. Now, who he's on the floor with, in order for him to get easy shots. Look, I've said this many times. I've seen Willie Green play better defense on Brandon Ingram than a lot of other NBA teams. Like he makes things very difficult for Brandon. Chris, you and I have talked about the rotation between Trey and Zion, but for real, it's the same thing with Brandon because Brandon needs space too, right?
Mhm.
Brandon needs space to operate. Brandon needs to be able to, feel comfortable in taking them and making a shot. And when I say shot selection, I don't want people to hear that and think that I'm condemning the mid-range jumper, bro. I'm a fan of the mid-range jumper. It's the style in which you get to the midi, which I think is a disconnect. 1-2 dribble, right? Boom. Start the possession on the block or where you want to take the shot instead of starting on the perimeter. Get working very hard to get a very tough shot. That's what I want to eliminate. So Willie Green is culpable. Roster construction. Griff is culpable. And look, I say this all the time because I don't want people to believe he's getting out of that situation scot-free. Zion Williamson is culpable.
Mhm.
Zion Williamson is very at fault for this situation because, for one, how can Brandon know how to play when that man ain't never there? Or he's working himself into shape in the offseason. Or how about this? Both of them are 100% at fault because there's no synergy between them two because they don't work out with each other in the offseason. It's a whole lot of blame to go around. And I'm not placing the blame on Brandon, like squarely on Brandon at all. Fuck, CJ is culpable. Up until this season, right?
Gail's culpable.
Oh, Gail is the 1,000 percentile of the culpability because you have an owner who is not wanting to go into the tax, who is not, you know what I'm saying? Like little things, the arena, the practice facility, the food in the arena, like the in-game experience. All of that could be better. The parking lot attendance could be, you know what I'm saying? Like it's blame to go around, and it's not squarely on Brandon. But the things that Brandon can control, like I said, shot selection, play style of play, health, durability, those things,
Yep.
right? You know what I'm saying? Because that's the other thing with him too. You talk about Zion missing the games, you talk about that, right? But Brandon also has an inability to stay on the floor. Hold on. I have a question for y'all. I want to ask y'all this question. I was about to put the tweet in here, but it's probably just easier to. So the Ringer had, because we talked about ranking of players, and Chris and I we went through one for Hoops Hype, and I think Hoops Hype had Brandon ranked 47th overall in the NBA. You just said something interesting in your verbiage when you were talking, Charles, and you said that. I don't even want to butcher your comment. I kind of want you to repeat it. You said something about Brandon Ingram being a B student.
Yeah. It was a B student, but it's like in the toughest class, right? So it's not just about it's the ability to do the work, but not to the level of maybe some of the other guys around him. And I think that is where we get frustrated because we pointed out 6'9" with that length, the ability to hit tough shots. It's like, dude, take a couple threes. You got to get, you've done well. Play a little bit quicker. 1-2 dribbles. Like the things that he doesn't do, you can see clearly. It's not some guessing. Well, what does he need to do to take the next step? Like you know what he needs to do. I think that is what makes it so stark. But when he does it, it looks really good. And it's like, dude, instead of doing that 8 times out of 10, Do that 10 times out of 10, and voila, you're one of the best players in the world.
So look, I want to share this with you. But before I get into that, this podcast is sponsored by the Scott Vicknair and the Vicknair Law Firm. If you or anybody you know is injured, please get at them, 504-285-7675. That's Scott and them, right? So shout out to Scott. Listen, The Ringer. I'm gonna try not to read this whole script, but The Ringer had Brandon Ingram ranked at 31. The Ringer says, for anybody who's reading it, who's listening and on the podcast and not able to read it, Ingram is perhaps the most underrated player in the NBA. That particular line, for one, just jumped out at me, right? Which kind of made me retract my statements, or it made me look at the trade offers a little bit differently. Right? So he's the most underrated player in the NBA. Maybe it's his placid demeanor or small market home. Maybe it's his metronomic manner in which he goes about putting the ball in the basket, cross screen, the post up to baseline turnaround. Maybe it's the frequent ailments that keep him out of the lineup. He hasn't played. Ingram hadn't played more than 62 games since his rookie year, or that he's appeared in only one playoff series. But all of that criticism melts into irrelevance whenever you witness him go shot for shot against the very best, which we've seen happen, right? Ingram can dissect the defense and set up teammates and attack a game plan that's typically dead set on slowing him down. Willie Green. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know they talking about defense, but I'm talking about particularly the offensive style of play that slowed him down. What are y'all thoughts on that?
Go ahead.
I think it's spot on. First off, I think the ranking of him is in the right ballpark. I think 47 is too low. I can understand it coming off this season, but I got Brandon squarely in between, I would say 30 to 37, which is why I think the Pelicans need to be a little bit more that's a very good ball player to pair with Zion from just a strictly talent standpoint. But I think that's spot on. I think if I was a marriage counselor, I would sit Brandon and Willie Green and maybe even Griff down and be like, yo, point guard, better lineups, play quicker. Like, why can't we do those three things? And let's hash it out. And they got to get on the same page. And then you also have Zion and doing his thing. But I think they got to figure it out. And I think those relationships have to get worked out. And then you can also include Zion as a foursome, but then also individually those three together, because they have their own separate issues where we need to talk about how we maximize this thing. And I think I've said it before, the four most important people in this organization, you can't do nothing about the owner. It's Griff, it's Willie, it's Zion, it's Brandon. There's got to be a Venn diagram of where they come together and we can find some common ground. And that common ground is where you live. Because I think you can make it work, but it requires them to figure out that space and try to live within it.
Chris, how you feel about for one, the commentary that the Ringer provided, and then not only that, but the ranking of Brandon on that list?
Yeah, I think if you are if you're breaking down Brandon as just an individual player and you're breaking down his strength and his weaknesses, I think he's easily a top 50 player. I think he's a top 40 player. I really do. I don't think guys that with his ability to facilitate at that size, some of the strides he took defensively, I don't believe that he is as bad as a scorer or offensively as he showed in some stretches this year, even in the playoff series. I don't think he's that. I don't think he's a 20 points per game kind of individual. But we're talking at his best. More than likely, he's 23, 24 points per game, probably 5 and 6, somewhere around that range. That's a top 40. That's in that range that Charles is talking about. But the issue here about Brandon isn't what he can bring as an individual. It's how much does it impact winning?
Mm-hmm.
That's the, how can you, is it even able? Can you merge his strengths and his play style and the things he naturally / likes and loves to do into a winning program and everyone else? You know what I'm saying? Is that possible? And that's the thing that has been confusing over time. Like, you can run this back and win 45 games again. You could
Mm-hmm.
probably win 49 games, again. Maybe even more if you get a couple breaks in regards to just having certain players together for a certain period of time and a couple additions here or there. But can you get to that next level? Because when you're talking about paying Brandon the amount of money that you're going to pay him, even if it's not, max money, what you're paying Zion, what you're about to pay Trey, what you're already paying CJ, what you're going to have to pay to replace, to fill the rest of the roster, that's going to be an expensive bill. And that means, and at that price range, you have to know that Brandon can be a large part of the equation that's going to win basketball games. From, we're talking style to just simply the Karl Anthony Towns way of looking at things and noticing, I know what I can do on the floor, but this the guy. Karl got on the podium and said, Ant's the guy. Now, Ant was available, and Zion has to be available, and Zion has to fully dedicate himself. And that's also the thing that's unfortunate about this whole situation. It might be a little bit easier if we could count, if we knew Zion would play, 60, 50 games. If we knew, we saw pictures of him being, looked like he in really good shape yesterday. Shout out to Saints Pelicans 23. But at the end of the day, if we're just focusing on Brandon, that's the key, man. That's the key. Can you pay him that money and maybe have some other deficiencies around this team? Can you sacrifice those things and expect Brandon to take it to another level, help take this team to another level? Regardless, like, even because I believe that even if Zion and Brandon are bad fits, I think that there are certain things you can do with this roster to get over that.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you get a center, a mobile center, whether it be a lob threat, someone, who can move around a little bit, or someone who can stretch the floor, or whether it be, a point guard, or if you had maybe a better mind that had complete, I guess, control of the offense, things like that. There's ways, I think, to get around what Brandon and Zion don't do in regards to meshing together. I really believe that. But at the end of the day, man, there are things that are disheartening in regards to this situation, and with everyone involved. We've heard multiple times about Brandon being asked to take threes and to take more threes, and him just not doing it, and it not being successful. Right? Him wanting to play a certain way that, again, is slower. It doesn't fit what this particular style of NBA is about. It lives and dies on a bunch of tough shots, and it goes away against the things that makes him dynamic when everyone's together. When Brandon decides, I don't even think I tell y'all something. I don't even believe his 3-point shooting is the most valuable thing he brings when this team is healthy and upright.
Mm-hmm.
I think when he decides to attack the rim and attacks the rim strong, that's more valuable than anything, because that opens up some of the clogged areas on the floor. That allows other people to move. That allows people to cut back door. That gives wide open shots to stationary guys, whether it be at the perimeter, the wing, the corner, swings, like those kind of things. But when you are settling, which Brandon does have, a tendency to do sometimes, it sucks. So I mean, they can do some things to overcome. I think what they're up against. I don't mind the rating, but I don't think it's about what you think Brandon is as an individual player. I don't think it's about what you think Brandon is like if you turn on a video game and play 2K.
Sure.
I think it's about, what do you think Brandon's ranking? Because if you were doing a team fitting ranking, a winning, a team, a winner's rating, and you were ranking just based off of fitting guys that fit on any different roster, any kind of situation, any kind of setup, I don't think his ranking would be top 50. he has to change that. And I think he has the ability to do it, but I don't know if the Pelicans can gamble on it again. And if they do, what do they sacrifice in the meantime?
So to speak to that, to put the onus squarely on Brandon, I do think there's some things that he's shown, even this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think he took a step back when Zion started kicking it in the gear. I think there was a stretch during kind of like the middle part of the season. We were kind of asking, where's Brandon? And you look at the box score, and he'd be somewhere between like 14 and 18 points, 5, 6, 7 rebounds, 5, 6, 7 assists. The shooting wasn't as efficient as you like, but the attention to detail on defense was better than we had seen. I do think that's a real thing. And I do think when you look at our team defense, I think the strides that we saw from some guys, Zion, Trey, and Brandon, I think they're real. And I think you can lean into that. That right there gives you the flexibility to maybe be more aggressive with other parts of the roster. You don't have to lean on certain types of utility players on the roster if your core guys are going to defend along with Herb Jones. I think Brandon did show a willingness to do that and be more of a playmaker. And he even had a couple games where he didn't really have a great game, but he made some key buckets. I'm thinking about that Portland game. There's a few other games during that streak where he was like, all right, or Memphis was another one where we were kind of just lackadaisical. And then he came and he did what you would want from one of your top two guys. And I think that is something I would look at and go, okay, this is the vision of how you can be, to your point, Chris, you can affect winning and help elevate our team and not necessarily do it your way. I mean, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. I thought, for me, that was very encouraging. And I think that's something that can help you feel comfortable moving forward.
You had some, Chris?
No, I mean, I just think him finding that balance, man, is it's gonna be the most important thing, and I don't. It's just it's a gamble. It's a gamble either way. But that's the thing that I struggle with Brandon. I don't knock the player. I don't knock the fact that after this, that in his offseason, he's gonna put in the work. And I wouldn't be surprised if he is a better player and a better fitting player to wherever he's at, whether it's New Orleans or whether it's Cleveland, Atlanta, wherever the team is. But you look at Team USA.
Sure.
His stint there, where our thoughts about him, I can't speak for everybody, but the thoughts about him going in were in the comments that were made about from people that were on that staff.
Sure.
It was totally different than the guy that ended up leaving that camp. And that's troubling to me, right? That's on film.
Sure.
And then you see sometimes, a guy when this team is just searching for where he fits best, searching for, because I won't say, Charles, that he hasn't tried. I don't think you finish some of the games with 7 points, 12 points, 14 points, whatever the case may be, and not try. Now, some of those games he was god awful in regards to just completely inefficient.
Yeah.
But it's just, I mean, there's some really bad things that he has to erase, man. And I think some of that has to do with him simply looking in the mirror. And you gotta ask me, is Brandon willing to be able to do that? I don't know. I don't even want to say I don't get that feeling, but I need to be comfortable with knowing that he is self-aware to be able to say that what happened in FIBA was on me. Even if I can blame those around me,
sure.
Even if I can say, why you stick me in a corner knowing how good I am, I need Brandon to come out of there and say, listen, I fucked that up. I could have been better at that. I need him to come out of this season hurt, no matter what the situation was, no matter whether he was transitioning, whether he was sacrificing, whether he was taking a back seat to say, I gotta find a way to still be me. And that's the toughest thing about this whole equation. Because if they got to pick between Brandon and Zion, they're gonna pick Zion.
Absolutely.
Zion's the generational talent. If teams are gonna look and say, if you can't find a way to be your best and be dynamic with him, then you're the problem,
Sure.
right? Can Brandon look in the mirror and say, whether it's right or wrong, for every single thing that happened to him that he should be 100% pissed off about, for any immature act that Zion did, from the affairs of the front office to any issues with, to how stale the coaching staff is, to Willie Green, to everything that's happened since he's been in New Orleans? How much is Brandon Ingram willing to take accountability for when he looks in the mirror? And I'm curious about that, if he returns or he goes someplace else, because he's going to have to figure this out all over again, even in a new setting.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you 100%. I have a question for one of you guys. Brandon's statements at the end of the season, do you think that was indicative of the right mindset, or do you think that was just, these mics in my face, I don't really feel like talking, I'm just going to give an answer and get up out of here? Because I felt like anytime you say this was the worst season, and I'm pretty sure, I might be misquoting, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it. The worst season of my career.
Since he's been in New Orleans.
Or since I've been in New Orleans. Okay. I feel like when you say that, the implication is I didn't do certain things I should have been doing. Or else, I mean, you can look at it in multiple ways, but I'm wondering what your take is on that.
For me, it's funny because, as people in media, as people who deal with the media of basketball, you always appreciate honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes when you get honesty, maybe not the media, but the fans kind of hate that honesty. Like you hate to hear a person give you their raw thoughts in that moment sometimes. In Brandon's case, for me, Chris talked about a realization, self-actualization. I think he saw that. I think he was a person who basically just got demolished in the playoff series for 4 games. He got killed. Not only he couldn't get past Lou Dort, couldn't do anything with Lou Dort, and then Lou Dort pretty much he matched his offensive output too.
Surpassed it, really, yeah.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think, look, let's be honest. He was hurt. Cool, right? But how that works is, Jerry Rice had this quote: "If you playing, can't be hurt." Right? Like
you out there, yeah.
You
out there. Like it just is what it is. I feel like I was I was encouraged to hear him say that, just because you don't hear Brandon say those kind of things. Like Brandon doesn't really give you, for one,
talk.
He doesn't talk, and his media availability after games has been non-existent in his tenure in New Orleans. So in order for him to give you that type of quote after a playoff series saying, man, you know what? Man, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm seeing, man, this has been a terrible season for me. You know what I'm saying? I could do some things better. I'm adding words to it, but I can do some things better. I wasn't the best version of myself, and not because of the injury, but I don't feel like that I lived up to maybe the status of how I feel like I can play. Honestly, as a fan of the game, fuck the media shit. That's really all I can ask of you.
Mm-hmm.
Especially to do it in real time. I respect it and I appreciate it.
It's words to me, man. And maybe that's not just Brandon's fault. Maybe it's Griff's fault. It's it could be Swing Cash's fault. It could be Willie Green's fault. It could be Zion's fault. It's just words. And unfortunately, this is the same guy that after game 1, when Lou Dort's physical someone asked him about how physical the Thunder were with him and how physical Ludort was, and his response, I believe, was, "Let him do it. We'll be ready. I'll be ready." Well, he wasn't ready.
Yeah.
So and to be quite honest, there were periods where he looked like he had just given up.
Yeah.
He had just simply given up. And I mean, it's tough for some people to rebound from that, man. And I'm not talking about him, but it's tough for some people to watch that and rebound because now you're questioning, what's really behind. We don't hear you speak, and we hear about your work ethic, and we hear about them. We hear about all these other things, but it's no different with Zion. When we don't see you for a certain period of time, and we don't hear from you for a certain period of time. And I'm not talking, Zion was available for pretty much a good majority of, media and so on and so forth, and we're seeing him more and more. I'm talking about earlier periods where, it felt like he was always, he was hitting. It's, at that point, we wonder about how mentally tough,
Sure.
how strong are you? What's your heart truthfully like when it comes to winning at this level and doing whatever it takes? I don't think Brandon by any means is a soft or magic, or mentally fragile individual, but I also aren't taken away by words at the end of a season where money is on the line.
Sure.
Contract is, you're looking for a contract, you're looking for future security. I wouldn't be drawn to think that wasn't his last opportunity to give a verbal, on a national stage,
Sure.
give a verbal plea and kind of explain what exactly happened and what he was going to be doing going forward, man. So, I'm happy that he said it. I'm happy that you saw some passion there, for out of him, for a dude that's typically so stoic. I'm happy that he gave you something, but at the end of the day, it's words, man. I've heard a lot of people in the organization give words and say that they're gonna do this and they're gonna do that over time, no matter what, bro, and no matter what happens with Brandon going forward after this show, draft class, whatever the Pelicans decide to do, it's time for action. Nobody else wants to hear anything else about promises, about changes, about what you've seen and what you need to see, and about your goals of being not being a 49 win team, and knowing who you are and knowing what you intend to be and knowing how aggressive you're gonna be. I don't care about media day. I don't care about Instagram posts. I don't care about any of that, bro. At this point, we are here for action. What year is it? Lito?
It's 2024. Oh,
Well, no. What year is it in the regime now? What
I'm
year?
sorry. It's year 5. We're going into year 6.
It's year 5, right?
It's action. And while some people may feel like that they've had gradual improvement, and I could be here for that, for that conversation, we still have some of the same questions that we had when this thing completely started, and some of the same problem areas. We can't continue. We can't pay somebody $45 million or whatever Brandon is going to get paid and be going into another season of having those same issues. They got to figure it out. And if they pay him, if the Pelicans pay him and they're committed to him, then it needs to be clear that everyone has a plan on how this shit is going to work.
I would agree with you 100%.
I agree too. It's hard to you know what I'm saying? It's hard because he said some of the issues they still have going into year 6. To me, it's the same issues. Like nothing has been answered, unfortunately. Before we get out of here, I want to ask one question. Charles, biggest need on the roster for you, is it a center or is it a guard?
I think it's a guard. And I think you need, from my understanding, CJ is entrenched with this regime. And I think it's highly unlikely you see anything happen with him this summer. So my guess is the starting lineup is going to look the same, but the changes that you need to make are going to have to happen between the 6th, 7th, and 8th men. Obviously, Trey is going to be there. I think you gotta swap out one of those defensive utility guys, Larry or Dyson, and you have to go out and get you. I think this is a free agent class of mid-level point guards. I don't think your starter is there unless there's a deal that moves you, involving Brandon. And I don't really see the value in that route. I don't think Atlanta's going to play ball the way that we would need them to. I think DeJounte Murray is probably the person you think about, size, true point guard. I just don't think Atlanta's going to play ball, asking for Herb or some shit like that. It's just not going to work. So I think you got to turn to Tyus Jones. You got to figure that out. There's sign and trade possibilities. I don't know what Washington is going to want. It's going to hard cap us, but it don't matter because we're not going to be in the tax anyway this year. So I think, to me, that you got to go strong after player his caliber. And there's a few other guys I have to double check, like DeLon Wright, some other guys in that kind of back of the rotation mix. And then I think center by committee is where you go. And I think, was it Goga Batate?
Batate, yeah.
Batate. I think, and you guys have talked about this on previous podcasts. My hope with the center by committee is that you find a guy that maybe has the potential for some long-term runway. So maybe someone like Goga, or maybe Andre Drummond has another burst of 2-3 years as a starter, or a guy like Nick Richards, who you guys have talked about. One of those guys sees the opportunity and just runs with it, and maybe you get them on a below average deal, and they can outpace that, and now you got some momentum. But for me, you got to have a point guard to kind of mix up the lineups and to give Willie another option. Somebody that can come in, does what he says, play defense, be where they're supposed to be, but then give him something offensively to kind of boost where I feel like he's lacking, if that makes sense.
For sure. Chris, what you think?
For me, I don't even know if it's the center or the point guard position that I would focus on in regards to importance. I think for the Pelicans, it's direction, and it's the action behind that direction. So if they choose to, because last season they got this wrong to me. Whenever they decided that they were going to keep Brandon and keep Zion Williamson together, them not deciding to be aggressive, whether that means moving a draft pick, whether that means to upgrade, whether that meant to take an asset loss for a positional gain, that was a loss to me. Or whether that meant, strengthening your bench, whatever the case was. I think they made the same mistake at the trade deadline.
Yep.
So if they do this again and they bring back Brandon, whether it's popular or not, they need to finally do that again. If CJ McCollum isn't going to be involved or going to be moved in the next year or so, whatever the case may be, you can pencil him in the starting lineup. And if Brandon's going to be back, and then at that point Herb Jones is going to be a starting lineup, you got Zion, then you need to find a way, one way or another, to upgrade your center position. And I mean upgrade the player that you lost, not what you have. You need to upgrade Jonas Valanciunas, and you need to upgrade him with somebody of some real ability, whoever that is. Or you need to add multiple parts to your bench, multiple impact players to your bench, even if that means guys that were previously starters last year that are coming to New Orleans out of all places to come off the bench with Trey Murphy, with whoever is left, Dyson Daniels, Jose Alvarado, Larry Nance. I don't care who it is, but the upgrades need to happen there. If you go the other route and you trade Brandon Ingram, I don't want them to I like DeJounte Murray, but I don't want them to trade Brandon Ingram for DeJounte Murray.
No.
I want them to take a loss.
Okay.
I want them to truthfully take a player loss. I want them to take that loss. And I want them to move like a team like a business. I'd like them to think about salary flexibility. I'd like them to think about a future move down the line. I'd like them to gather maybe a mid-level contract or two. I'd like them to set themselves up to be a player in the next wave of things that are possibility, or I'm sorry, that are possible, and whatever they gain back, have those parts fit around who's going to be starting, putting Trey Murphy in the starting lineup, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, whoever else you keep, fill out the rest of the lineup, however you choose to. You have CJ, but they need to pick a direction.
Sure.
If you trade Brandon Ingram just to trade someone who is in his that is in his area, of player that doesn't take you to another level in regards to how we're thinking about this team, whether it's Trey Young, guys that we don't believe that they're going to be able to get. I think Darius Garland could be one of those type of guys. Pipe dreams like Donovan Mitchell and so on and so forth. If you can't do any of those things, and you're trading him for pretty much a swap of sorts, which I think DeJounte Murray in some ways is going to be, even if I like his contract and I like him as a player, then I don't think this works to me, because I don't think it improves your ceiling. So you need to make a move that's either A, improving your ceiling, or putting you in a questionable situation without the same salary question mark that you have to give you more flexibility to make moves down the line.
Real. In closing, give me a one-word answer. I'm gonna start with Charles. So we've discussed a myriad of things in this podcast. Do you trade BI this offseason?
No.
Chris?
Yes.
Cool. So look, before we got out of here, a couple things. One thing, how much $1 costs? Is 7.5 cents to make $1.
Okay.
Add that up with, what is it, 40 mil a year that is on the table. You do the math on that. Secondly, sometimes you just got to be like the Pelicans, pop out and not trade players.
Don't never forget about where you come from. Stay focused and look out for your people, man, because they got a lot of people that ain't got nothing. And I done seen a lot of cats separate from their people and don't do nothing for them when they get up there. Don't get that big head, because that big head will be stars, like my folks say. Stars this year won't be stars next year. It's about longevity. If you ain't got no longevity set in your heart, and you ain't got the mind frame to stick to this, you might as well give it up before you start.
Here today, gone tomorrow. That's Lito, that's Charles, that's Chris. We out of here. Peace.